Last night, I wrote a thread that is probably the most important thing that I've ever written. It was boosted by Elon Musk and is now being read by millions of people. There's some people out there, though, who need to hear this on video. So I decided to read this thread to people so they can share it with their friends who may be only watching on video and not willing to read a super long thread. So let's dive right into what I wrote because it's about where we are in America. And I entitled this, "It's Time to Understand What Time It Is in America." President Trump is being prosecuted by Biden's regime and multiple state level Democrats. Every agency in government has been weaponized to investigate Elon Musk because he's trying to level the playing field online to empower citizens, especially citizen journalism. Newsweek just broke the story this week that the FBI is both investigating Trump voters and treating them like terrorists by using the same types of tools that they used against ISIS. The Department of Homeland Security and CISA both used proxies to censor influencers like me and Charlie Kirk for opposing Democrats too effectively. Grandmas, including one with cancer, who thought they were allowed into the Capitol after police waved them in on January 6th, were thrown in prison despite the fact that they themselves did not commit any violence. George Soros elected DAs are releasing pedophiles and criminals to carry out record levels of crime. Over 7 million illegal immigrants have entered our country under Joe Biden as president. And for some context, only 14 states in America even have populations larger than that. Okay? I want you to think about that. The vast majority of US states don't even have 7 million people living inside of them. But that's how many came in under Joe Biden. Schools are grooming kids about so-called social justice, gender identity, and sexual topics, including books with porn in them, while hiding all of this from parents. This is indisputable. Okay. And when I wrote this list, I'm going to pause from the thread for a second because I want people to understand something. When I wrote this list, I wrote it with the intent of people being able to take this in as fact. Okay. I didn't use any sort of hyperbole or anything along those lines to try to exaggerate what's going on. I'm just giving you the basic facts of where America is in 2023. So here we go. People fear saying that they vote Republican, despite the fact that Republicans won the 2022 popular vote. A lot of people don't know that. We won the popular vote in 2022. And they fear saying that they vote Republican because they know they can lose their jobs over it or be ostracized publicly. Doctors are giving kids sex changes with the full support of the White House, including children of our troops. Doctors are losing their licenses over disagreeing with the regime and their narratives. This is happening on a multitude of subjects, not just one. Banks, big tech, and online transaction services have banned prominent influencers for the crime of being conservative. We've seen this time and time again, not just in the United States either. We've even seen it abroad with people like Nigel Farage. Banks, I'm going to skip to the next one. Inflation and interest rates are destroying our economy in ways that we'll be dealing with for over a decade. 80 to 90% of Congress represent themselves and their agenda or their lobbyists instead of the people that elected them to office. This is one of the most critical problems facing our country is voters don't have true representation in Washington. And this is a problem we need to focus on fixing and pressuring, frankly. Big tech companies manipulate what the public sees to sell the Democrats' narrative. This is something that is indisputable. When you look at the environment in our country, even when somebody uses Google, Google is manipulating what they receive back when they search a specific topic. So if you search about, say, the 2020 election or some sort of news story about Donald Trump, it is going to produce results that are not favorable to conservatives. It's going to produce artificially results that benefit the narrative of the Democratic Party. Soldiers were fired by the thousands for being conservatives who didn't want the COVID jab. They even denied chaplains religious exemptions. I want everybody to stop and think about that. Chaplains who are charged with taking on the religious services for our U.S. troops. They're the people our troops go to. They're essentially their pastors. Those men and women were denied religious exemptions for the COVID vaccine, okay? Whether you feel like the COVID vaccine is fantastic or not, that should be startling to you, that chaplains were denied religious exemptions by the U.S. government. And if you don't believe me, we featured some of these chaplains who are active duty, okay? I did interviews with them. They were active duty chaplains. And the Pentagon responded after those interviews went viral and ended up dropping the requirement. But it was a requirement until pressure became too much. People are put through public struggle sessions if they say that men cannot be women. The DOJ and Democrat DAs are deploying lawfare to bankrupt prominent Trump officials and supporters. And I sort of summarize this by saying the process is the punishment. Okay. And if you don't know what that means, let me explain. The Democrats would be very happy to jail all of these people. But if they can't do that in the end, they are happy to settle for draining these people of every dollar that they've got to their name. They are happy to just make them homeless and destroy their families, and it's happening all over the place. We just saw yesterday Mike Lindell from MyPillow admitted that he's lost everything. Okay, he's not the only one. The US government has been weaponized to take everything from these people, and whether you disagree with them or not, that should scare you, because if the government has the capacity to do it to these people, they have the capacity to do it to you and to me. College kids can't even get into schools, most schools at least, if they express any conservative views during that process of trying to get admission. And many, once they get into college, know that they will fail their classes if professors find out that they're conservative. Parents were treated like terrorists by Merrick Garland and the DOJ simply for protesting school boards over COVID and the sexualization of children. Again, something that is undeniable. Everything in this is fact-based. Professional programs to become doctors and nurses are adding steps to screen for ideology to eliminate conservative voices. Many do this in very sneaky ways, okay? Doctors, for instance, you have to go through a residency program, and these residency programs are now requiring COVID vaccines and boosters as a way of screening out those conservatives who may be opposed to the narratives being pushed by the left. Some states have passed laws even to take custody from parents who don't affirm the new gender identity of their kids, and some legalized kids running away to their state to get an abortion or sex change. I want to pause here for a second for people to realize how incredibly dangerous this is. Okay? On one hand, you have them allowing children to run away from their parents and go to these states to get sex changes or abortions with the state's permission. And on the other hand, you have a state like California who just passed a law that says that parents can lose custody over not affirming the gender identity of their kids. And again, there's no lines here. It doesn't say, well, if your kid identifies as a walrus, yeah, we all understand that's crazy. It just says you have to affirm, period. Doesn't matter what your kid identifies as, you have to affirm it or lose custody. And I don't really care what your kid is identifying as. You should never be affirming it, okay? Unless it is the sex they were born as, okay? But to use the government as a weapon to take your children only has precedent in communist, fascist, and dictatorial regimes, okay? It has no basis in a free country. It has never happened in a free country. You no longer live in a free country. So if you're still deluded into the idea that you are free, you are not. And it's time to really take stock of that and understand the dangerous road to hell that we're on. BLM and Antifa members received multi-million-dollar settlements after burning down cities with riots and looting for a year because they're essentially modern-day brown shirts, and the Democrats knew they had to reward these people if they wanted them to do it again in the future. If they need to strike that fear into people again around election time, if they want those BLM people to go out there and start riots or Antifa people to start riots, they needed to make sure they were rewarded. That's why if you search right now, settlement, BLM, riots, you're going to find all of these BLM stories where they were actually paid off by city governments run by Democrats to the tune of millions of dollars. Here's the truth. Our future is closer to Russia under Stalin, Cuba under Castro, China under Mao, or Venezuela under Maduro than it is to the ideals in our Constitution. We are living through the intentional destruction of the country that we know and love. But why? Because communism has never come to be reality without chaos, destruction, and separating children from their parents. That point is very important because you'll look back in history and find that in every communist revolution, they found a way to separate children from their parents ideologically or physically. And we're seeing both. America will not survive unless Republican politicians get serious and recognize how far down this road to hell we are. It's not time for Fox News hits where you get your one-liner off to fundraise off of. It's not time for another hearing that goes nowhere. It's time to use every, and I mean every, lever of power that you have to crush these new age communists. And yes, I mean communists. It's time to be ruthless. Communism is no longer just about state ownership of the means of production, because there's no need to own it all on paper when corporations do everything that you tell them to do and fund your political pet projects. In fact, this tactic ushers New Age communism in faster than they ever could have hoped, because such a large chunk of the population doesn't realize what's happening yet. Communist control tactics, plus a surveillance state and a technocracy that they control, is more powerful than communist dictators like Mao could have ever hoped for. They would have blushed over this embarrassment of riches when it comes to the control apparatus Democrats have built. Some might say, but they don't call themselves communists. Yeah, neither did Castro. Castro called himself a humanist. He said he cared about social justice, healthcare, and racial equity. Does that sound familiar? He only admitted to being a communist after he had amassed enough power to where he could crush any opposition. Republicans have one shot to get this right. Republican AGs must start aggressively investigating and prosecuting criminal elements within the Democratic Party. Republican governors must call in the guard that they control to carry out shock and awe raids on gangs in blue cities. The crime has gone too far, and we cannot allow Soros DAs to destroy our beautiful states. Work with your legislators to cut funding to every woke endeavor and institution. Map out a total wipeout of far-left influences in your state with mass firings or funding cuts. And don't be afraid to take whatever action you can to replace failed blue city politicians. It is a time to use levers of power that people have left cold. Okay? Governors need to do really courageous things right now. And maybe we have the wrong people in office. Maybe that's the truth. Maybe we've elected people who are too weak to do this, too entrenched in the establishment, too entrenched in the corruption. They've made too many friends within it that would be upset if they did what was necessary to save America. But I would regret for the rest of my life not saying this if I didn't encourage these people to do the right thing, because one of them might listen. One of them may be the linchpin to saving this country. And so governors, above really honestly almost anybody else, because they have a certain level of executive authority, have a duty to step up at this point in time. Step up against the illegal immigration, step up against the crime, step up against the federal government infringing on the freedoms and rights of your citizens. Be brave, be bold, and ask yourself, what would our founders do? And I'm going to bring that up again in a minute. Republican lawmakers on a state level need to use every tool they have to legislate and investigate in an aggressive manner that brings us back from the brink. You know what you have to do. I don't have to give you a roadmap. If you're a state legislator, you know what levers need to be pulled. Do it, okay? Stop the dog and pony show. This is not a game anymore. This is about the survival of our country. We're not facing JFK Democrats, not even close. JFK would be called a fascist by these people, okay? It's time to understand who you're facing off with. They are New Age communists. Leave no lever cold from not being pulled. Saving America is going to take everything, and I mean everything. If you aren't as ruthless as them, we will lose this country. And if you bristle at the word ruthless, remember, there is a difference between ruthlessness after you're attacked and ruthlessly attacking someone for no reason. You have been attacked. Your country has been attacked. Your children have been attacked, and your faith has been attacked. Righteous ruthlessness to save the values and people you love is the virtue and the legacy that you need to be chasing after. Have the integrity to stand up for them. In the real world, if somebody came and attacked your child or attacked your church, you would fight back. This is the real world, okay? Don't wait till they're at the front door of your church or your home to stand up and say something. And if you're an elected official, don't wait until that point to say, oh, gee, maybe we should do this. It's time to protect our country now and insulate it from these communists. Ask yourself this. This is a principal question everyone needs to ask themselves, especially in elected office. What would our founders do? A good motto to live by right now is one that was almost the motto of our country. Rebellion to tyrants is obedience to God. Or another favorite of mine from Thomas Jefferson. When tyranny becomes law, rebellion becomes duty. There's a reason that so many survivors of communism and their children are warning you at the top of their lungs to take this deathly serious. Communism comes like a thief in the night. You don't see it coming, but you have an advantage many people have not. You have the warnings from people who have lived it or been the first generation after their family survived communism. Don't waste that advantage. Don't squander the greatness built by our founders, because in the end, you'll either have the courage that America desperately needs, or you'll live to see your country die. The choice is yours. This comes from me as somebody whose family already lost their country once to communism in Cuba. My family saw it happen. I know this is a long video, but there's a lot of people out there who need to realize the state of America right now, because here's the thing, everything moves fast. Our attention span is honestly embarrassing. But you know what? Something happens when somebody throws so many things at the wall. It's easy to get distracted. It's easy to focus just on what landed on you and to try to wash it off. But when you look around and realize that so many things have been thrown at the wall against so many people, and you have it listed out like this, and by the way, I didn't list everything, okay? I didn't list everything. I could keep going. Look at how the DOJ has treated Catholics. I could go down a list of more signs we were on the road to hell that ends with communism. I kept it to this concise list, okay? Because this should be enough to get the picture. This should be enough to paint the picture of where we're at in America. So what do? Okay? It's not enough to be upset. Yes, share this video. Yes, share the thread. Wake people up. That's great. But that is not all you need to do. If you're a private citizen, you've got a few duties. One is to take stock of who your elected representatives are, both locally, on a state level, and nationally. Do everything you can to get involved and to change out the people who are not doing their job. Change out the people who do not understand what time it is in America right now. Work on a grassroots level, knock doors, do everything you possibly can to shift the window toward freedom and the founders' vision for our country. You have a lot of power. Tap into it. They've spent a lot of time and greed convincing you that you're powerless. I don't believe you're powerless. I believe that you're powerful because that's how America was created. It was created with people like you and me saying we had had enough. And that by having enough, we were willing to stand up. We were willing to risk our jobs, our friendships, whatever it was. I don't care. My family lost freedom once already in Cuba. I will do anything, and I mean anything, to ensure that my children don't lose it here in America. Because there's nowhere to run to. Okay? Cubans were able to run here. They warned Venezuelans that communism was coming. Venezuelans didn't listen, and they were hit. And the Venezuelans had America to run to. If it happens here, there is nowhere else to go. This is it. So take it seriously and invest serious time and resources into being the change that our country richly deserves in your area. Because if we all protect our little pockets of freedom, before you know it, if you take an eagle-eye view, you will see a country protected, insulated, to where communism will not survive. We can take the oxygen out of the room. Okay? Now, if you're an elected official, there are a lot of things you need to do. And like I said, you know what they are. You know those things you've thought of. You know those levers of power. For too long, we have had this idea that we need to turn the other cheek. At a certain point, you have to realize that this is really a question of if you're willing to serve up your children and grandchildren as sacrifices to communism. I'm not. I will not turn the other cheek. Use every lever of power. It's that serious. This isn't somebody who wants to, get a bunch of engagement and make money off of ads. I don't care. Demonetize this. I don't want an ad on this video. I just want people to understand what a serious situation we are in. So you can't brush this aside and say, oh, this is somebody who's trying to get clicks. Everything I've said here is honestly an understatement of where we're at in America right now. You can choose to accept that or continue to make excuses and be complicit in the downfall of our country. It's your choice. I hope you choose wisely.